Okay, so
So you
Dean,
want
our second
to
round of reports from the New York Film Festival. Tell us what you saw. We last heard from you Wednesday night, so now we got Thursday and Friday to cover with you.
Correct. First film on Thursday was a Turkish film. I don't know what's going on in Turkey, but they're starting to release they're just starting to release some amazing films. Of course, one of my favorite films from the last film festival, which was released in January of this year, is Once Upon a Time in Anatolia by Nuri Bilge Ceylan. And then this new movie is called Araf, A-R-A-F, and it is by a female director. Her name is Yaseem Ustaoglu. And this film is a brilliant, moving story about a young 16, 17-year-old girl working at a truck stop in the middle of an industrial section of Anatolia. And at the beginning of the movie feels almost like a sort of like a Mike Leigh movie in some ways. You know, it's just about lower middle class people and their conversations and loves and things like that. And it has a very, very surprising, beautiful, wonderful, moving ending that really just came out of left field for me and actually left me weeping, in the theater. So when it came time for me to ask a question to the director, and I asked her, I intended to ask her, what's going on in Turkey? I mean, has there been some sort of political or cultural change that has led to all of the filmmaking, the filmmaking explosion there? But when I went to go and talk to her, we talked through Skype. I almost found myself, breaking down a little bit because I said, well, your movie moved me very much. I could almost not get the words out, but I got a hold of myself and asked the question. And she basically chalked it up to just the democratization of, having access to videos that can, the digital revolution is what's happened to Turkey, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, Araf is the name of the film. Araf means limbo in Turkish, and that refers to the sort of kind of boring landscape that these characters are living in. There's nothing to do out there except work and go home and watch television, and you might have an occasional dance or wedding or something to go to, but generally it's pretty boring out there. So that's the limbo of the title of the movie. The second film, the much bigger film, is Frances Ha.
Cool.
The new Noah Baumbach collaboration with whom I suspect is his girlfriend now, Greta Gerwig. She co-wrote the film and is his star and muse, and this is a absolutely wonderful, wonderful movie. Their last movie together was, of course, Greenberg, and Greenberg was a difficult movie for a lot of people to like, mainly because its main character was quite abrasive and hard to understand, and you really had to work at trying to understand and like him. And this is not the case with Frances Ha, though. Greta Gerwig is immensely likable from the moment she comes on screen. She shares the screen with the first part of the movie with her co-star, played by Mickey. It's a woman playing her roommate and her best friend. It's played by an actress named Mickey Sumner, a British actress, actually. And the film starts out with these two characters just having the greatest time ever in New York as like 26-year-olds living in New York City. They just seem to be having the greatest time together. But it isn't too long before the Mickey Sumner character, her best friend, reveals that she's looking to move out. And this creates a ripple effect in Frances's life to the point where she's in New York. She's a California native, transplanted to New York, trying to make it as a modern dancer in a dance troupe. And you see her dancing in the film, and I remember seeing her in the film dancing, and I thought, she's not very good. She's not the greatest dancer, you know. And that comes to play in the film because she's eventually let go from the company. And so this whole thing of, like, losing her best friend, who eventually gets engaged, the best friend gets engaged and gets further away from her life, then you know, trying to find a new place and moving in with new people, and then sort of losing her professional footing as well. All of this stuff sort of serves for Frances to be sort of a wake-up call to get her shit together, basically. And she spends the entire movie trying to figure out how to get her shit together. So in that way, it's kind of a companion piece to Greenberg, because Greenberg is also trying to make sense of his own life. But Frances is such a wonderful, effusive sort of. I mean, I would compare her character to somebody like Annie Hall, just somebody who is very effervescent and is talented and sort of gawky and gangly and loves to have fun and has interesting things to say all of the time and says what's on her mind, but sometimes to her detriment. It definitely has something to owe in its look to Manhattan. It is very, very Woody Allen-esque camera work in it. I will say that, you know, it's a very, very sharp, fun, funny, short. It's 82 minutes long movie, so it's very concise about just a young woman growing up. And here's one of the most refreshing things about it. There is not one instance of her. There's not one moment. There's maybe one moment in the film where you think this is going to turn into something that's going to be she's going to be looking for a boyfriend, basically. The boyfriend thing does not come in this movie, not one more time. It is not a movie about a woman trying to define herself through the man that she wants to love. It's about this particular female and primarily her female relationships.
So tell us what happened after the screening.
Oh, okay. So I at the screening, you know, the credits start rolling for Frances Ha, and I always when there's a press conference with famous people or whatever involved, I always like to sort of turn around and see, you know, if they're waiting in the wings to take the stage, and it just sort of makes me feel better. You know, it's something to do while the credits are rolling, you know, basically. So I turned around to look. I'm sitting on the front row, the opposite side of the theater, on the left-hand side of the theater, okay? And they're all the way over at the right. So I look over there and I see Greta and I see Noah standing there, and I looked over about 3 people over to the left, and I went, wait a minute, is that? Oh my God, it's Brian De Palma. Brian De Palma is sitting right there. He's a little chubbier than I remembered him, you know, seeing in his photos. I actually don't even know if I've ever seen a full body photo of Brian De Palma. But he was a little bit bigger than I thought, you know, he would be. He was dressed in a sort of a puffy kind of flight jacket kind of thing, sort of a khaki flight jacket. his hair is all white, and his beard is almost all white, except for, you know, a little bit of a darker gray patch in the middle on the chin. But he was unmistakable. I mean, it was Brian De Palma, and he was sitting there. He was standing there with I don't know, just a young girl at his side, you know. The press conference happens, and I'm sitting in the front row with all of the photographers. So I know that the photographers are forbidden to take photos with flashes while the press conference is going on, because it's annoying, of course. So they're allowed to stand up at the end and take all the flashy photos that they want to take, you know, and the people who are there are kind enough to pose for them. So when the press conference is over, of course, all these photographers stand up to take their photos, and that means I have a direct line all the way across to the right hand of the theater, where Brian De Palma is sitting in the third row. Everybody else is getting up to leave. Everybody's leaving. Even somebody is saying, excuse me, past Brian De Palma and everything. I get in the second row seat that's right in front of Mr. De Palma, and I say, Mr. De Palma, I'm Dean Treadway from Movie Geeks United. You remember Movie Geeks United? You've been on this show. He says, of course I remember. Said, well, we really want to have you on the show again. You know, I saw Passion the other day, and I loved it, and I reviewed it on the show on Wednesday. And you know, Jamie is one of your hugest fans, and we all love your work, and we all really want you to come back on. So I have this card here, and it has Jamie's information on it, and we'd really like to have you back on. And he said, sure, that would be no problem. And he said something about the distribution. He said, you know, we got to get some distribution for this thing, but yeah, it'll when it happens, you know, I'll definitely come back on. And I saw that he was looking over my shoulder. He was looking over my shoulder at Greta Gerwig, because you know that guy loves him from Greta Gerwig. And
I can kill her in the shower, Mike.
You know he loves her. So he was a little distracted, I will say. Like, he wasn't completely, like, focused in on me. I could feel him looking over my shoulder at her being photographed and everything. There'd be something
wrong with him if he was more focused on you than Greta Gerwig, okay?
Well, that means there's something wrong about me. That means there's something wrong with me, because I wanted to go and meet Greta Gerwig. But I sort of threw myself, as I said to Jamie the other day, I sort of threw myself on the grenade on this one, because even though I really wanted to get a card into Gerwig and Ballback's hand, but you know, there was De Palma. I had to do it, you know, and you know.
Well, we appreciate you interacting with you. That's like infinitely exciting for us on the show.
Yeah, it is. It is. I really liked it when he said, of course I remember. I thought that was great. By the way, I did end up getting a card to John Waldman, the PR director, who assures me that he's going to get the information about the show to Gerwig and Baumbach through their publicists. The last film that I saw that day is very, very interesting. What I think is going to be the final film from the famed French director Alain Resnais, who I guess is most famous for doing Night and Fog, for Hiroshima Mon Amour, and for Last Year at Marienbad, amongst many other movies.
These are all awesome films. I mean, these are
a collection of happy films.
Yeah. And this is actually kind of a happy film in some ways. This is called You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, and it is an adaptation of Eurydice by Jean Anouilh, who, of course, adapted it from the old Greek play. This is a very fascinating movie that I have to say it was like Last Year at Marienbad, for instance. I really enjoyed watching it. a lot of the time, but sometimes it was so way over my head that I thought, man, I think I need to take some classes in Greek drama, and Jean Renoir was like a experimental playwright, so I think I need to take some classes in that as well before I really get everything that's going on in this. That said, let me try and summarize this movie for you. It's basically a collection, at the beginning of the film, 12 or somewhere like a dozen different actors get the same identical call from the man that says that Antoine has just died. Antoine is a director that they had worked with in the past. It says Antoine has just died. He requests your presence at the reading of a will at his castle that he owns. So basically the first part of the film very humorously uses repetition to tell this story, and it shows each one of the actors arriving at the castle and in the same way with the same piece of music playing over and over again, and it's really funny. All of the actors are ushered into a room where there's a theater screen, and they on the screen they're ushered in the room by somebody who I like to think of as kind of playing the stage manager role. He's the guy who's telling them what's going on and so forth, and giving them certain directions and telling them where to be and so forth. The will comes up on the screen. It's a video will, hosted, of course, by Antoine, the director, and he says that he has some people who are working on a version of his version of Eurydice, and he has filmed it, and he wants to get the actors' commentary on how well this new set of actors, this younger set of actors, is doing with his work. In the process of watching this filmed version of this play, the actors in the theater actually begin playing the roles themselves, because they've played the roles, each one of the actors has played roles in this version of Eurydice for the director. And so they played the roles so many times that they can recite it along with all the people up on screen. So what happens is you become confused as a watcher of this movie. You become the lines between the actors who are watching the film and the actors who are playing in the film, and even the lines between reality and stage and reality and film, and just the lines of even like love and death and all those big subject matters, all those lines begin to blur. It is dizzying. When you get out of this movie, you feel like you've just been sort of just picked up and shook, It is not a movie that's going to appeal to a lot of people, but the people that it will appeal to will, and largely the most intellectual people, will really, really dig it. I mean, it's got a lot of playfulness. There's a lot of filmic playfulness in this movie, especially for a director that's in his early 90s. And it also feels to me like a final film. It feels to me as much of a kind of a final film because the film actually acts as sort of a reunion of a lot of actors that have worked with Renee over the years. And in fact, the actors are actually playing themselves. They don't have character names. They're playing themselves. And just the sort of funereal tone to the film, and sort of the sort of final kind of profession of love for movies and for stage. I don't know how much stage Renee has done, but I suspect he's done some. All of that stuff makes it, eminently watchable to a film nut, and it's quite beautiful. But it does feel like a final film, as much as like when I saw Prairie Home Companion, the last film for Robert Altman. I said that's got to be a final film. It just feels like a last movie to me.
Right.
And this feels the same way. So
that was the last one you saw at the festival.
No, I saw 3 others, but I'm going to keep those pretty brief. I saw one film called you'll be interested in this, Jerry. A film called Punk in Africa.
Mhm.
Because I know you're a punk fan, and this film deals with the rise of punk music in the late 60s or late 70s as sort of a reaction to the boredom that a lot of South Africans were feeling, because it was a very square country, you know, at least in, you know, it's like everybody had to walk in lockstep, and so it was for the youth it was quite boring. So this rise in punk, you know, sort of shook all that up. And you've got I wish I had the list of band names here with me, but I can't find my notes for it. But you've got a lot of interesting stuff. Basically, the film is quite interesting in the 70s when it's focusing in on all of that really, you know, that great sounding punk that came from the 70s, and then as it goes on, it gets further and further into the present day. In fact, it seems to make kind of a jump. Really, it seems like you know, there's punk from 76 until maybe like 83 or something that it covers, and then from 83 till almost, you know, 2002 or whatever, there's no reportage in the movie. And then from 2002 on, there's like what's going on in punk today. When they get to the punk today part, the punk doesn't sound like punk anymore. It sounds like ska or jazz or, you know, maybe what we would call alternatives maybe. But it's not punk, you know. So for me, the movie also becomes very self-congratulatory and sort of like, there's no perspective actually in the film. They only choose to speak to the musicians, and so, but there's no critical perspective. There's no cultural perspective, like from somebody outside of the music industry. There's no even talk to fans really, like what it meant to the fans. You see maybe a couple of them, but they don't really talk to them. They just, you see them. So it was a promising idea, and a lot of the punk that was coming out of there in the 70s is really good, and I would love to have a collection of some of that stuff, you know, things like, I know that one band was Gay Marines, and another one was Screaming Fetus, and
Screaming Fetus, wow.
Wow, there you go.
Screaming Fetus and oh gosh, I can't remember them. Empty Suits, that was another one. All that stuff's really good, but the stuff that's nowadays is just boring to me. So it was just sort of a block kind of fan film. That's what I call like a fan documentary. If you're interested in the subject matter, then you might like it. But if you're not interested in the subject matter, you're not going to like it. So it's one of those things. The other 2 films are very quickly. They're episodes of I saw 2 episodes. They have this sidebar this year called Cinema Reflected, and part of the sidebar, besides Room 237, which I didn't get to see at the festival, and I'm not going to be able to see, so I had to cut my trip short because of financial concerns. So if next year if we're going to the film festival next year, somebody's going to have to start a Kickstarter campaign for it, because otherwise, you know, I don't know if it's going to happen. But part of their Cinema Reflected series, they're going to be showing a French television series, episodes of a French television series that was done called, and I'll say the French title first, it was called Cinéastes de notre temps, or Filmmakers of Our Time. And in this series, the French go and do a kind of a examination of a series of different filmmakers. There's one of Jerry Lewis. There's one of Chantal Ackerman. There's many different ones. And if you want to find out more about the film festival, by the way, you can go to FilmLink. That's FILMLINC.com, and it'll take you and you can see all of the film and filmmakers that are profiled as part of this series. The 2 episodes that I saw, I was really glad that I saw because they were really, really a lot of fun. The first one was John Cassavetes. It follows John Cassavetes from 1965 to 1968 as he's filming Faces in L.A. The last interview takes place in 1968 as the film is being released. So the first part of the film is in L.A. and takes us through Cassavetes' home as he talks about what it means to be the kind of filmmaker that he is in L.A. at that time. He says he doesn't like L.A. because everybody has to meet by appointment. You can't really meet people face-to-face unless you have an appointment. So he has this little enclave of artists that he's working with out of his L.A. home. His L.A. home consists not only just of places where he lives with his wife, Gina Rollins, but also sets for his movies and an editing room and offices for his staff. And we get to go through the first part of the movie, and we see this incredibly charismatic John Cassavetes in front of us, who is constantly smoking, and we don't see him drinking, but I imagine that he's had a few. And he's extremely, extremely funny. This is a man who just loves to laugh and is really, really having a great time, just sort of undermining the studio system that didn't really want him, and pretended like they wanted him, but didn't really, And but this guy, just kept plugging away, making movies because he had friends with him that wanted to make movies and were willing to do whatever it took to make a film and to make a real film about real people, and not only just real people, but real people who were having a good time. That's one of the things that he says in the film. He says, I don't think that there's enough good times shown in movies. I think we get a lot of movies where there's a lot of drama and a lot of, maybe a lot of violence or a lot of clashing, but there's not enough showing the good times where people laugh and have fun and make love and all that stuff that we really love about living. And so anyway, the episode is filled with clips not only from Faces but also from his first film, Shadows, and by the time the French section comes up, being interviewed in Paris, John Cassavetes is a little grayed around the temples, and he's excited, but he's less effusive now than he was. He's less I don't know, fun-loving in this last part than he was in the first. So you can feel like the effort is kind of maybe the effort to make any film takes something out of a filmmaker. The second final thing is called The Dinosaur and the Baby, and it was just an 8-part sort of discussion between Fritz Lang. This is in around 1965. So it's Fritz Lang sitting there being interviewed by Jean-Luc Godard. This isn't directed by Jean-Luc Godard. He's just the interviewer here. But you could make a kind of an argument, given the prologue, the epilogue that comes in this particular episode, that maybe this interview is being directed by Fritz Lang, because we actually see him actually giving directions to the film crew. He flubs up a fact in talking about Jean-Luc Godard's movies, and he says, "Okay, cut this and let's start over." And he morphs into director mode. This is
Let me
great...
say, anyone that attempts to direct Jean-Luc Godard and Fritz Lang, I mean, that would. I don't envy that person.
No, I don't either.
Yes, I get it. I mean, it was.
I'd be triple guessing my angles and stuff, and that would be anxiety riddled.
Well, I'm going to return to that in just a second. This triple guessing your angles. At first, the conversation starts off, and it seems like Godard has incredible affection for everything that Long has achieved. And remember, this is the point where Long is really, he's not going to make any more movies. I mean, I think his last movie was The Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse which he made in West Germany in like '63. So this comes at a time where he had just worked with Jean-Luc Godard as an actor on Contempt. So this particular episode has many clips of Contempt in it, but it also has clips of a little bit too many clips, as a matter of fact, of Fritz Lang's M, which Godard and Long both agree that that's the movie of his that's going to live forever. You know,
I agree. Yeah.
So they both agree in that. It's a great sort of character study. It's a great study of how this particular episode is a great study in how young directors, when faced with older directors, kind of want to show off for them. They have respect for them, but they also want to show that, hey, we're here, we're the new guard, and we're doing things differently than you old fogies. And that comes to fruition in this episode in a moment where Fritz Lang tries to give Godard a lesson in how to direct a scene. He draws on a piece of paper. He says, here you've got a room, here you've got a desk, here you've got a man behind a desk. You've got to get these different angles in here. Over here, you've got a door that leads on the opposite side of the room. You've got a door that leads into the room. Well, I would tell the art director to move the door over here right next to the desk so there wouldn't be all that lag time walking from across the room to go through the door. He said I would have all these angles and all this, blah, 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 blah. And then Godard, meanwhile, says, why do all of that? Why wouldn't you just film it just like sort of like a documentary almost, you know? Why set up the shots? Why wouldn't you have more of an improvisational feel? And this is the gap between these two generational giants, you know, their own generation. This is
gotcha.
The way of doing things is completely foreign to the new guy, and so anyway, it's a great thing. I hope that Filmmakers of Our Times is going to appear as a series on DVD, because I'm sure it would be great to see a lot of them. I'd really love to see the Jerry Lewis one, so look out for that. But go to filmlink.com if you're interested in the film festival. There's a lot more interesting stuff. Life of Pi, the new David Chase movie, Not Fade Away, and Robert Zemeckis' Flight, amongst many other offerings at the film festival. Also, the restored version of Lawrence of Arabia and Heaven's Gate are going to be there. Even Andy Warhol's Empire is playing there. So split up into 8 parts, by the way, 8 one-hour parts. So
wow.
Lots of interesting stuff going on. It's kind of almost too much to handle, really. And
thank you for covering it for us.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Thanks.
Yeah, it was fun.
And thank you for
meeting. It was exhausting.
Thank you for meeting De Palma for us.
Yeah, absolutely.